Hey, Brandon with goHUNT here. I am going to run through a late season elk hunt, kind of e-scouting some of the things that I do. I'm going to start off with a little bit different approach. There's a piece of the process before I even get to our mapping platform that I use. I think it's super beneficial, get you off on the right track, even more so than what you can pull just out of the mapping platform. So in the other screen that I've got right next to me, I won't scan over and show that, but I've got a bunch of notes that I've taken from various places. The key one is over here on the insider product, how I narrow down the search to which unit that I'm in. A lot of the notes that I put onto my sheet over here have come from the unit profile. This is going to tell you a little bit about the area in general, some of the information, species details, weather patterns, about the animals in there. And like I say, we're focused on that second rifle or that third rifle, and it's going to just give us a little bit of information about what to expect, get us off on the right track. Tells us the amount of people that are typically hunting this unit and their success rate. And it is an over-the-counter hunt, so the success rate is not huge, but this is a part of the product that I use a lot to begin my research. From here, I'll also call the wildlife biologist over that area, and they're a wealth of knowledge. You can gain kind of an insight to the area, animal behaviors. That's ultimately what we're trying to find and plan for, is where those animals going to be, the time of year that we're going to be over there. This is once I've selected a new area I may not have ever been before, how I go through my planning stages. So I'll jump into the layers. We're going to be in Colorado. The first ones obviously are going to be the unit boundaries. This tag is valid in a bunch of units, but I'm focused on one. That's where I've decided to hunt. That's where I'm planning to be. And so that is just, a reference layer. It's going to allow you to visually see, where you can hunt. If this was, say, a draw tag and you're limited to one GMU or one unit, it's critical, because you can't harvest an animal outside of that. And so I'm going to find an area. This is my unit at a swatch. From talking to the biologist, I've got an idea of the general area that I'm going to be. If you didn't have those notes, the next spot that I'm going to go into is government land. It's going to show everywhere that is public land. You're going to notice that a large portion of this unit is all public. One of the reasons that I selected it into the filtering is that it's got ample area for me to hunt as a public land hunter. Another one in there, if you're interested in it, wilderness areas, it's going to show that little darker shade of green. That's going to restrict some of your pressure, some of that, ATV traffic or truck traffic, being later on in the year. We're talking, end of October into November with these seasons. A lot of people are going to want the comforts that come along with a bigger camp, a wall tent type camp, or truck hunting with a heater, ATV side by side, that type of thing. So if you're willing to do it and are able and prepared enough to be able to do a backpack style hunt this time of year, this is incredibly valuable, because it's going to eliminate a lot of those people. Now that we know that pretty much all of this, that the area that I've selected is Forest Service, I personally typically turn that layer off, because at that point I try and keep a simple view. I'm most interested in the satellite imagery. I'm interested in seeing a little bit of the terrain that's on the actual ground. The key element when I start planning anything, I typically leave these on for any state that I'm in, regardless, and it's the road and trails layer. That's how you're going to get there. It's navigation, it's planning, it's preparing. And that's where I begin. So before I even get started, I start with that layer. I start identifying trailheads. Where are my possible access points? And so you'll notice anywhere the color changed from yellow to a brown dot, which is the hiking trail. So we're going to GMU. You can click that. It's going to bring up all the information that you're in, give you access to that. That's the MUM, the Forest Service designation for travel. So anytime I'm looking at this area here because of the access. That's the style that I'm wanting to go. I'm going to start dropping waypoints. And so, anytime that I see that, I'm just going to, rename that to, access. From here, you can change them to the type of waypoint. Some people don't do that. I do that because it's visual for me on the map. Anytime I see that icon with an A, it means that's where I'm going. I typically change them. Personally, I change them to green. Green means go. That's my jump off point. I save that waypoint. One thing that's unique to our platform that I love being organized. So I'm going to create a collection. This is like a folder that you can put everything you want in there. And I'm just going to put, I keep them simple. So it's my Colorado 2021 elk hunt. So now that access point now lives in that collection. So any others that I drop on the map. So that's one, I'm going to drop any of these that I can see. And again, this is just an initial planning stage. And so I'm going through, looks like another big trailhead right here. And what's nice about these features is that as I'm adding them to the map, now when I go in the field, this can also serve me as directional. When I've got the mobile app out, I'm trying to navigate, say, back to a particular waypoint. I can go in, a lot of times if I decide to pick one, I will change that trailhead's waypoint color, strictly so I know, if things get crazy out there, that's the trailhead that I'm wanting to go to. This is something that I do anytime I start off planning, is I'm going to mark my access points. That's my jump off points, and go from there. And then there's always like an interesting that come up that look interesting. Like you've got, we've got our Esri base map labels that are coming in here, and then my MVUM stops for some reason. I get real curious when that happens. A lot of times I'll throw in the private land layer in Colorado that can block access, and there is some chunks of private, but it's not blocking at the point where that is. Now, whether that's gated, a lock gate, any of that type of thing, I'll typically tend to err on the side of what the MVUM is stating. So I'm gonna actually drop that waypoint right there. The great thing about it, again, if I get in there and I go, one of the days of scouting that I have, I go in and that I can actually drive all the way up that road. I'll adjust that in my mobile app because they all sync together. What's on my desktop that I'm doing right here, kind of the e-scouting, transfers to the mobile device, and then any changes I make on the mobile device also transfer to the desktop. So it's a great platform that you can make adjustments as you go. I do that a ton when it comes to water points, glassing points, that we'll get into a little bit later on. So that's kind of the beginning thing that I'm looking at. Those are pretty much all my major access points to this section. Which you'll notice is the section that was wilderness. From there, again, that was all done in 2D. I'm just looking at just a broad view. I'm not getting in. I'm not analyzing. From there, I'm going to start planning from these access points. Where do I want to focus? Where's my plan A? Where's my plan B? Plan C, D, etc. Down the line. One thing I did want to show is now that you're starting to see that I'm creating features on the map, they're starting to generate in a list. That's my collection. I've got the 4 items in it. I just want to identify how slick that is on the collection side, to keep everything nice and organized in there. From there, when I get into the planning stage, if you will, Colorado's great in the fact that they give you a species distribution. It tells you, you can confirm that what you find on the map with the notes that I've got from my biologist. But it's a great way to visually see what that biologist may be telling you. Again, I've got a whole process on what I do prior to calling the biologist. Try and get your ducks in a row a little bit prior to calling them. Their time's valuable. It's, they're more than willing to help. They're busy. In my opinion, they're super underpaid for what they do. They're managing the asset that we value the most. And a lot of times they're pretty strapped and they work long hours. So be courteous of their time when you do that. But again, I jump in. We're focused on elk. If you were a mule deer hunter, you can use the same thing for mule deer. We're in elk because of the time frame that we're getting into. This is the later season, November and October, November, those two rifle over the counter seasons. I jump straight into the winter sections right here. So I usually go in, winter concentration areas, which are going to be, where that concentration is, where you're not an overall winter range, which is going to be that one. Those two tell me, so winter, typically it's below, so that typical winter range, which it may not be that November timeframe. Like it comes to how those animals behave, what triggers migration, what triggers them to hit the winter range. A lot of times with elk, it's snow level. The amount of snow that gets in the high country, they'll kind of follow that line down. But knowing that I'm in October, November, kind of a transition between that rut stage, it's post rut. You may have some bulls still hanging with the cows. You may not. Those bulls may pull off and tend to hang a little bit higher than the cows would. A lot of times those cows will go into that where the vegetation is best, go into the winter, and they'll just head down there, where those bulls will pull off, set back into that kind of that bachelor group a little bit and hang a little bit higher. But I actually use the summer concentration area as an indicator between the two. And you'll notice that in the area, that higher elevation is their summer pattern, which is expected. But what that tells me is if they're in here, a lot of times they'll rut in here. That's their summer habitat. I may not be fully into the winter side of things. That may be a December, January, February timeframe. But that gives me, what that does is between those two is where I want to look. And in fact, they do give you, a migrations pattern, which is going to kick those out. You can start to see these lines start to appear. And those are collared animals that they've tracked. That's giving me actual animal behavior. You're going to notice, if you were wanting to get clear up on, you're going to notice that there's definitely a travel corridor through this area here. Mountain Pass is probably a little bit easier to travel than some of this, more rugged type country. And so that's, given that I've got a lot of migration right through here, this is kind of the area that I'm going to start looking at. So I'm going to kick those off. Just again, like I say, I've got a general area now. From there, I don't need them. I like a clean view of the map, so I usually will turn those off. Again, roads and trails I'm keeping on because they're very handy to reference. GMUs I'm keeping on because I can't. This is a limited area that doesn't offer over the counter, so that's my no-fly zone. I can't cross that unit boundary, so my plan shouldn't incorporate that. From there, I usually jump in right to 3D. I tend to live in 3D from here on out. I've got my basic lay of the land understanding, navigation routes, that type of thing. And so now I'm really into, what am I looking at? From here, it's simple, to start panning, to start actually getting a feel of what's going on in there. Where are my glassing points? This is the view I'm gonna primarily stay at, because this, if you'll notice my compass orientation, one of the notes that I pulled away from the biologist is a lot of times if the snow hits, those animals will stay on a south facing slope. So I'm looking from the south to the north. You can identify that with the compass there. And so that tells me I'm looking at the side hills that those elk might live on. Again, as we went through, all those migration corridors were coming up through there. And we can look at those, nothing's locked out. So we can go back into that species distribution, start looking at those migration patterns again. And so we've got those lines. So with a lot of lines coming in through these areas, big side hill, timber, there's water down in here. That's some of the areas that I'm going to focus on. I guess one key element that I would show you is this style of hunt. I don't have livestock. I don't have anything, so I would be packing that animal out. One unique feature that I do, you'll notice there's a trail in the bottom of it. My access point is 10,000 feet. As I go up anywhere into the areas I'm looking, I'm gaining elevation, which everybody knows what elevation does as you're backpacking. But one key feature that I tend to do is with any elk hunt, if I can plan my routes so that I'm gaining elevation on the way in and I'm losing elevation on the way out, my goal is to go in here with a camp and my weapon and harvest an animal. So coming out of that drainage, if I can at all possible keep it downhill, it just makes it easier on me, because I'm going to have to do this, 3 or 4 or 5 times to get that animal out. The bonus feature of hunting late season, temperatures aren't warm. That meat's going to stay fine. I can hang it in trees. I can take my time. It's not that I'm rushing to try and get that animal out to save the meat. Once I get it boned out, taken care of, meat bags hung, I'm not concerned because it's getting well below freezing at night, and a lot of times those meat bags will freeze solid. So you're even back of the truck, 10,000 feet, meat's going to be great. So that's where I go. Again, I tend to live in 3D. From here, given that a lot of the migration was down these corridors here, I'm going to focus on this waypoint. So I'm actually going to, I've changed all of those to green, so I'll focus on that one. I'm going to just change it to a color so it differentiates. That's my focal point right now. That's where I'm going to prefer access. From there, I start planning route, and you'll notice there's two trails coming off of this trailhead. From there, I just kind of look lay of the land. What areas look like they would hold elk this time of year? One interesting thing that I'm noticing is, like, this side hill is great, but I'm looking at a lot of this stuff, and it's starting to look like it could hold, it could hold some elk in that time of year. You'll notice, even with the imagery, you'll notice why we're focusing on those south-facing slopes. North-facing slopes have a ton of snow on them. South-facing slopes do not. There's going to be more forage there. Just easier way of living for an elk up in that country. Given the migration patterns, I'm going to start looking. From one unique thing about this is, if I chose to hunt this drainage, there might be some areas up here that are going to allow me to hunt both sides of that. If I choose to hunt up here, what I really start using 3D to start seeing, what I can see from there, what I can do, and I can see a lot of country. I can see that whole thing from one of these knobs, and then it's even giving me some access. This is real timbered, but I could see some of this upper basin from here. It's giving me a look into some of the stuff. Again, that looks real timbered. May not be able to glass it. I may be able to glass it though. But that's an area that is definitely going to pique my interest. It is, I do use this elevation bar quite a bit, mainly just to see what it's going to take me. So if I were to leave the trail at 10,000 feet, I'm gaining, that's only 300-400 vertical feet, and not crazy, 600-700 yards, depending on what I'm packing. That's going to take me less than an hour to get up there. So it's a very feasible option to get up there in glass. It's going to give me an advantage point. So again, I start dropping waypoints anytime. Again, gonna add these all into this one collection, keep them organized. Right now I'm in a test account, so none of my existing waypoints for all the hunts that I've got planned this fall and in past years, I've got these collections set up, or these folders set up for every individual hunt that I've got, and I break them out by year. So even if I hunt an area year over year, those same waypoints can live in multiple collections. But if there's any unique to a specific year, then they only live in that folder. And so it's a real slick way to keep things organized. From there, so that's going to start giving me access points. That ridge or these ridges, if I were to want to shoot out, some of these areas are going to give me, if I could get up in here, I don't know if I'll be ledged out or not, but that's a vantage point right there that is very intriguing to me. So again, I just go in and I start, and you'll notice one of the things that I do is I really don't get too crazy with marking up maps. I'm not a guy that's going to I have done it in the past, lay out polygons of areas to focus or trails or routes or whatnot. If you want that type of dynamic to your mapping platform, the tools are there to do it. If you wanted to create polygons and areas of focus, one thing that I've done is early on I learned that I can only hunt so much area in a given day. And early on I had to plan that out because I would get over ambitious on my e-scouting side and just start dropping like plan A, B, C. Well, they'd be 10 miles apart in terrain like this, and there's no way that I could actually do that. And so over time, in the beginning, I would drop polygons and say, hey, here is my day one focus. It allowed me to stay, focused and planned and not try and over plan for what I could actually do. But over time, I've just kind of learned to keep that in the back of my mind as I go through my platform. So the unique thing about these maps is everybody does things differently. Find something that works for you, find niches that work for you. The product will allow you to personalize it and to do it your way. Again, I tend to keep it simple. I don't throw a ton of waypoints. I don't throw a ton of lines. I will draw, if there's an area like this area right here doesn't seem to have a trail going in it. There's obviously going to be the best route right there. So I would spend some time, draw in, whatever you might want, like trails, features, anything that you might need for navigation purposes. My idea in hunting this area right now, just off the bat, is to hit that trail. Usually if they're marked like that, it's a decent trail. You can cover some country. It's not going to be too awful bad on that. So you can get in and start doing that. From there, there's going to be some more glassing options. I'm starting to get, the way my brain works, I like to go high. I like to gain elevation. So a lot of these big basins really catch my mind, but I've got to keep in mind, we're looking November, like first week in November. I may get over there and there's 2 or 3 feet of snow in those higher basins, that 11,000 footers and above. So I'm going to use a little bit of caution on that, but anytime I can see trails in the bottom of these, I can get something out. That's a big factor for me. So I'm going to, that trail looks like I can come up off that. It may be somewhat timbered. It's not too crazy of a slope right there. So I'm thinking I can actually hop, this creek bed probably in there somewhere, come up through. Again, I'm not actually plotting routes. I'm not the guy that's going to do that. I'm going to get there. I'm comfortable in the backcountry without having that stuff on my mobile device. But what I may do when I actually do get there is on the mobile device, I can run a track. So when I get there, I can actually run a track that will map my route in, and then I've got it for future reference. And I know exactly what that route's going to be as opposed to guessing, trying weak lines. But I do feel like I can get up in this country. So I'm actually, like, this ridge right here is going to allow me to glass, probably glass a little bit of the ridge itself. I would be close. But it's going to open up this big basin. I don't know if it would be, shootable or not. Direct line of sight, 700 yards, the far side, 1100, probably not shootable for most people. So that's something to take into consideration. If I do glass an animal, how am I going to get to it? I use that tool a ton. But if I were to see, You know, if there were elk up in this is definitely shootable. I'm not worried about that. You know, 500 yards. I am comfortable at 500 yards, even if I had to stretch it. You know, 650. I am comfortable taking that shot. It's you know, it's a long ways, but like, again, I'm comfortable. So that's good information to know. Again, I'm not dropping any of that. I will definitely add it to a note section. You know, a lot of times I'll go in as I continue my research, but I am going to drop a waypoint along this ridge, just try and see what's going to give me. So that this peak right here, there's a little hump. If you notice, there's just a little bump right there. And that's all you really need. I am a little bit concerned. One thing that I'm going to, you know, you'll find out is there is some vegetation right here. You may not be able to see that. You may have to roll off, you know, it's pretty sparse. But you may have to adjust that point. And again, that's where I say, you know, as you get into the field, that point's going to give me reference. That's all I'm really worried about is point of reference at this point. Because when I get into the field, you know, that waypoint may move up the ridge, it may move down the ridge. You know, it may be great where it's at, but you know, I'm definitely going to verify that, check it. Mainly, I'm interested. You know, just as I'm processing this, there's a lot going into why I'm liking this country. One, there's no major trails. You know, for horseback, it's an over-the-counter hunter. There's going to be other hunters in here. If there's horses, they're going to use these. So it's below that, but that works to my favor. If I can get to one of those trails with an animal, then I know I can. You know, the getting the animal out is just that much. You know, quicker, easier. All of that scenario. From there, I start looking so I'm starting to put out and lay out a few glassing points. I am super curious by this little bowl. Anytime I can find that little kind of hanging bowl off, you know, kind of off by itself, looks like there's water in the bottom. There's not a super easy way into it. You've got fairly steep elevation. You know, I've got a glassing knob that I could get there and roll up in. That right there might, probably off, maybe even that end point. As I'm looking, you kind of dropped a little too much elevation. So your best bet would probably be right there. But as I start dropping, you know, when I get glassing points figured out, my next objective is where am I gonna stay? Where am I gonna put camp? You know, fortunately, we're talking Colorado. A lot of times there's going to be plenty of water, but that's a huge consideration. If you're going into the high country of Wyoming, there's not a ton of water up high. So where you place your camp, and you know, you've got to drop to water if you're staying up there an extended period of time. For this hunt, I'm thinking a 5-day hunt. Given the fact that I've got to take a bunch of winter clothes, I've got to take, you know, quite a bit more food just because, you know, my body's going to burn more to keep me warm. Just that colder temperature, you're going to require a few more calories. Winter clothes, sleeping bags heavier than it is in an earlier season hunt. I would take like a 4-season Hilleberg, or I'm going to take a Seek Outside with a stove. So I'm, instead of a 3-pound shelter, I'm now into that 5-pound shelter. So I've got a lot of extra weight, which I can combat that. So I'm typically used to going 7-8 days in the early season. Well, if I cut 3 days worth of food, now I'm balanced back out to the weight that I'm comfortable with. So that's one thing to consider, is I'm not going to go in here and figure I can stay for 10 days. I'm just not capable of doing it. So I'm looking at 5 days, which with that, you need to be a little bit more strategic on where you start placing camp. I don't really want to haul a ton of water if I'm planning to stay up on here, you know, on the backbone. but it's not going to kill me. You know, I've kind of got this stretch right here. I've got, if you zoom out, most of my glassing part for this, you know, the what I would consider my first 5 days is all right in this area. One thing I'm going to look at, you know, how far in are those junctions roughly? Again, I'm not crazy worried about, you know, exact mileage at this point, but if, you know, that first turnoff, I'm 2 miles into there, which is not crazy bad. You know, that's very doable. If I wanted to put it kind of more central, getting 3.5. So I'm actually liking that quite a bit, to be honest with you. To be kind of in that area right there. From there, we jump in. Looks like there's a ton of water down in, like you're actually seeing, you know, beaver pond type stuff. So I've got plenty of access to water up through this type of stuff. So I've got, like, this area right here is kind of looking interesting to me. I'm not super concerned about being, you know, off the trail too awful far or hiding my stuff, anything like that. I've never had any bad experiences in Colorado, any of the hunts I've done. And given that this canyon, if you look at it, is very U-shaped, you know, anytime you start getting up on the side hills, it's going to be harder to find a flat spot. So I'm actually digging that spot right there. Again, when I get there, it may be, you know, not a great place, but for my initial plan, that's a rough area that I'm gonna consider putting camp. I use different colors, so we'll get into it a little bit. And I just noticed something earlier on, but I don't really have a big designation for colors, but typically I try and associate green with anything that means go, jump up on, anything like that. And red, for me, indicates a, you know, no go, you know, stop, things to consider. And I do use, so I use various things for camp, but I do use, you know, something to consider is, and I noticed that as we were looking at this canyon, kind of something that I shied out of this is with the imagery, you'll notice that there's, you know, given the time frame, you've got snow, it's late season, those are wall tents. What that's telling me is that's either a family that's hunted this a lot to where they've got a pretty established camp, you know, 3 big wall tents, or it's an outfitter. So one thing that I do anytime I can identify that type of pressure, because that camp's going to have multiple shooters in it. That camp's going to have, you know, anywhere from 2 to 5 to 7, you know, tag holders. So what I do is I do label as a camp, but I just label as an outfitter. And what I use that for, what I use that for is just reference. Now I know, you know what, they're probably using the same access point that I am, given that they're probably trailing it in either up the bottom of that. Anytime they've got a wall tent like that, they're going to have livestock, probably going to be a horse camp. I'm gonna assume from the position of that, they're gonna, I would think if they were gonna hunt this main drainage, they would hunt it up the main trail right here. They could go up and through, but what I'm betting with the location of that camp is they're going to be focused on all of these side, you know, all of this country kind of feet that's fed by that similar to the way that I've looked at this and kind of where I was thinking of putting my camp and feeding all of this. they're going to be focused on this, which is a thing to consider. Any time it's an over-the-counter season, there's going to be pressures. There's going to be people. I don't get freaked out by that. I try and use it to my advantage. And so they're sleeping and camping, and they're going to be hunting their way up each morning into some of this. There may be, some of these may actually start to be more appealing to me because of the pressure I identified down in the bottom. So I'm actually going to start looking, if they get into elk through here, where are they going to push to? They're going to either funnel up through this stuff, up through the saddle, or out through here. You'll notice my unit boundary is right there. So I don't know that I want to focus on this type of country. One, I just can't get to it from where my main plan was. So like a lot of this natural, especially like you're seeing this feeder little drainage right there, and I'll shoot in. So if they get into elk, elk are going to travel up through, that little corridor there, or they'll roll these up into the sanctuary. Or even more intriguing, when I'm start looking, day 3, day 4, that little hidden hole that I was talking about, you're going to get hunters that from that outfitter camp that come up through here. That hole may really start to hold elk day 3 or 4, or the top side of this. You've got 2 big giant areas that have a bunch of timber in it. They get pressure. As long as there's not snow that's impeding them from getting up into that country, that's going to be some areas that I focus on. Again, I'm not a guy that's going to drop polygons and lines and all of that. If you do, or if you need that, helps you plan. That there's method. There's madness to every method. This is kind of what I do. This is kind of an area that I would focus on. So not to go crazy on this, I will do this for each one of these jump off points. So that's pretty much going to be my plan A, if you will. Now that I've identified that outfitter camp, this other waypoint over here, if there's going to be a pile of pressure up in here, they may push and roll elk into all of this type of country off through there. So that may be a plan B. But what I'll do is I'll go through those same steps for each one of these access points. Looking at the map, this would probably be the next one that is most appealing. This big giant basin up through here, is pretty appealing to me. It's open, got a big open side hill. It's got some south facing slopes on this side. Again, it's 10,200 feet. As I go up through, I gain elevation the entire way up. So packing an animal out of there is downhill. Same scenario as I did earlier, just a different area. And if I have to relocate, if that first area is a complete bust, I spend 2 days in there. I pull back out. This is an area I could pull around to. I'm close. Trailhead to trailhead, looks like connecting roads are down around. Just down around really this ridge. So it's not that I'm 2 days travel time. I'm burning 2 days. It's quick. I come out the morning or the evening, stay at the truck next morning, roll around, and I'm back in. So that's really kind of the way that I would go about using the tool, planning, preparing. It's the way I've done it in the past. I think our platform and our goHUNT maps allows me to stay organized with the collections. There's some things that I've always, didn't like or couldn't do that we're implementing into here. So yeah, no, it's that again. That's what I do. That's kind of the method. The things that I go through into maps. I'm a huge proponent of using maps to get an idea, get a lay of the land. But boots on the ground experience is going to be the preferred method for me to scout if I can. If you can, try and use these tools the best you can. Again, I front load it real heavy. I use unit profiles on our Insider platform to gain any information. I put those in a note section or a sheet. I do try and get a hold of biologists. That's my background. I got a wildlife biology degree, and I know what they do. I know how much they care about the animals in their areas. But they're also a proponent of hunting. Hunting is how they manage those populations, and so they're more than willing to share information. But go into it prepared. Plan. Get your idea and groundworks before you jump into the maps and really start laying a plan out. And when you get in there, use all of those notes. Use the terrain. Use the different layers that we've got to help you identify wintering areas. Summer areas. I didn't jump into the elevation talk much at all, but consider elevation, snow levels, from what the biologist tells you on animal behavior there, what to do there. But the tools the maps are an incredible tool. Get you off and running and so much further ahead than people that just show up without really knowing. So, real 3D is amazing. It allows you to see it for what it is, allows you to set limitations on travel and just do a bunch of different things. But if you got any questions about the method that I do or anything that I did today, drop them in the comments below. Again, if you're interested in a series about how to call biologists, how to do that prep work on the front side, let us know. If there's an interest, we'll definitely put something together and go through that kind of the first stages that I do when it comes to this stuff. But thanks for watching. Again, if you've got any questions, drop them below. We'll see you in the next one.